its presence and howl are known to be an omen of death. It pads its way through the dusk and the dark with purpose. It knows who it's looking for and where to find them. Welsh Corpse Dogs, also known as dogs of darkness, dogs of hell, or the Gwyllgi, resemble a massive mastiff dog, but are, it is said by those who have seen one, larger than a 9-year-old steed. In addition to their size, they have fiery red eyes and a putrid breath. As with the Banshee, the corpse dog acts as a messenger of death and will not necessarily attack or injure people, but its overwhelming presence and burning gaze is said to cause such terror in some who see it that they've been left paralyzed, or at least so traumatized that their life is forever changed. G'day, I'm Kitty. Welcome to Fairy Encounters. In this video, I have 11 true and truly diverse encounters with the corpse dog of Wales. But first, I just want to show you two vastly different views of the corpse dog and the danger that it poses to people. In his book about Welsh fairies, author Wirt Sykes says of the corpse dog, "The death portent howl through the air with a voice frightfully disproportionate to their size, full of a wild sort of lamentation. Sometimes a voice like that of a great hound is heard sounding among them, a deep, hollow voice, as if it were the voice of a monstrous bloodhound. Although terrible to hear and certain portents of death, they are in themselves harmless." Now, on the other hand, we have a description from the Reverend and folklorist Elias Owen, which paints a far darker picture of the corpse dog. "The fairy dogs howled more at crossroads and like public places than elsewhere, and woe betide anyone who stood in their way, for they bit them and were likely to even drag a man away with them, and their bite was often fatal. They collected together in huge numbers in the churchyard when a person whose death they announced was to be buried, and howling around the place that was to be the grave, disappeared on that very spot, sinking there with the earth, and afterwards they were not to be seen." So, can both be correct? Or does the truth of the corpse dog lay somewhere in between? Well, let's find out. So settle in now and brace yourself. This particular corpse dog was seen by a member of the family who happened to be living there then. An inmate of the house was taken very ill one day, and at night the farm dog began to howl in a very unusual and disturbing manner. On the following night, as one of the sons of the family went out to look after the animals before going to bed, he heard a sound which he thought was made by a sheep or a pig coming towards him, along with a curious noise of chains. He could hear a chain clanking quite plainly. As it came nearer him, he saw the thing clearly, a dog in appearance, a sort of reddish grey colour, dragging a chain. It ran past him with the speed of lightning, and he saw no sign of it again. He supposed that someone had been leading it, but could see no one about. Directly afterwards, their own dog began to howl in the most dismal and extraordinary way, and when this sound was heard, all hope of recovery for the sick person was given up, and indeed it was not long before he drew his last breath. A few years ago, a certain Mrs. Hudson went to live in South Wales. One day, not long after her arrival, she and a friend went for a walk along the high road near the town. On their way, they had to pass a quarry, which was reached by a gate and path leading off the road. Just after the two ladies had passed this gate, Mrs. Hudson heard a sound of loud panting behind her. She stopped and, looking back, saw a large black dog come running out of the quarry, down the path and towards the gate. Whereupon she said, "I wonder whose dog that is and why it is in the quarry." "What dog?" asked her friend, looking in the very same direction. "I don't see any dog." "But there is a dog," said Mrs. Hudson impatiently. "Can't you see it, standing there, looking at us?" But the friend could see nothing. So Mrs. Hudson, somewhat impatiently, turned and walked on, feeling convinced that the dog was there and marvelling that her friend neither saw it nor heard its heavy, panting breaths. Soon after this, happening to meet her brother-in-law, who was an old resident in the neighbourhood, she asked him who was the owner of that particularly large black dog, describing where she had seen it. Well, the brother-in-law, listening with a rather queer expression on his face, answered, "So you have seen the dog? Then, according to tradition, either you or your friend will die before 6 months are past. That was a ghost dog you saw. It has appeared to several other people before now and always forebodes death." Well, Mrs. Hudson didn't pay much attention to what she considered a very superstitious explanation of a trivial occurrence, feeling perfectly certain that what she had seen was a real animal. But it was an explanation she recalled with a feeling of horror when, within 6 months of the date of that walk, her friend most unexpectedly died. The curious point in this experience is, of course, that the phantom dog was visible to only one of the two women, and that not the one for whom the warning was intended. As Mr. David Walter of Pembrokeshire, described as a religious man and far from fear and superstition, was travelling by himself through a field called the Cot Moor, where there are 2 stones set called the Devil's Nags, which are said to be haunted, he was suddenly seized and thrown over a hedge. He went there another day, taking with him for protection a strong fighting mastiff dog. When he had come near the Devil's Nags, there appeared in his path the apparition of a dog, more terrible than any he had ever seen. In vain he tried to set his mastiff on it, but the huge beast crouched, frightened, by his master's feet and refused to attack the spectre. His master boldly stooped to pick up a stone, thinking that would frighten the evil dog, but suddenly A circle of fire surrounded it, which, lighting up the gloom, showed the white snip down the dog's nose and its grinning teeth and white tail. He knew then, he said, it was one of the infernal dogs. A story was told by a Welsh lady named Miss Johnson, who was staying during the winter of 1874 with some relations at a house in the west of England. One Sunday evening, about 6 o'clock, when Miss Johnson and the family were sitting quietly in the drawing room, a great noise was suddenly heard, exactly like hounds in full cry. It sounded as though a pack of them swept past the drawing room windows, turned the corner of the house, and entered the yard behind. The kennels of the local hunt were only 4 miles away, and on hunting days the hounds often met or ran in the direction of this house. But to be disturbed by the cry of hounds on a Sunday evening was such an unheard of thing that Miss Johnson and her friends were, for the moment, petrified with amazement. Almost immediately the butler came running to the room, exclaiming, "The hounds must have got loose. I hear them all in the backyard." "But how could they get in?" asked the father of the house. "The gates cannot be open at this hour on a Sunday." The butler went off looking rather disconcerted and not a little scared, and Miss Johnson went into the hall, where she found her collie dog, usually a very quiet, gentle animal, barking and rushing about in a state of frenzy. She opened the front door, and the collie ran out, barking and growling savagely, made a great jump in the air as if springing at somebody or something, then suddenly sank down, cowering to the ground, and crept back, whimpering, to his mistress's side. An exhaustive search revealed not a sign of a hound or a stray dog about the place, and Miss Johnson and her relations went to bed that night feeling much puzzled by the strange incident. The next day, news came that a near relative of Miss Johnson had died suddenly the evening before at 6 o'clock. 25 years later, Miss Johnson had a similar experience previous to the death of another relation, on which occasion the hour of the death and the time at which she heard the hounds cry again tallied exactly. And while meditating on the strangeness of such a coincidence occurring twice over, Miss Johnson remembered the tales that the country people about her old home in Wales used to tell concerning the corpse dog, the fairy hounds, which were said to haunt the woods round the house, to see or hear one of which was a sure sign of death. The tradition about corpse dogs is, as a rule, death follows wherever they appear, and when they approach a dwelling where death is coming, they are seen by the dog of the house and cause the animal such terror that it foams at the mouth and utters dismal howlings as long as the hellhounds continue near. That is the reason why a dog howls before a death. When you hear that mournful sound, you may be quite sure that a corpse dog is in the neighbourhood, and if you observe which way the dog's head is turned, in that same direction is the demon animal. Some dogs are daring enough to go to the door of the sick person's house where the corpse dog watches. Yes, and howl beneath the window of the room where death awaits his prey. Of their existence, nobody has a doubt. That one has been actually seen by an individual is as good a proof as if 100 or more had seen them. Dogs are reliable witnesses of their presence in any place where they come. They strike terror in any religious family, especially if any member of it be ill, and no small anxiety is felt until the foul creatures leave the neighbourhood and the house dogs cease to howl and foam. The day he died, a black dog appeared. From whence no one knew, it leapt on the bed and lay across the dead man's face. Chased away, it disappeared, but was again found sitting on the coffin after the lid had been screwed down. And after the funeral, a whisper went round that the dog had jumped into the hearse as the coffin was put in, and that later it had appeared slinking like some evil thing through the knot of mourners at the graveside, and then was never seen again. Can you imagine being stalked by the corpse dog? There are many cases of people being in the wrong place at the wrong time who have crossed paths with the corpse dog as it just goes about its business. It may have no business with them, but that doesn't mean they survive the encounter unscathed. Overcome with terror by its unearthly howl or by the glare of its fiery eyes, they are often left senseless by the experience. During the 19th century, Edward Jones was making his way home one late evening on horseback, where he had been attending a fair. Jones described how all of a sudden he realised that he was being stalked by a corpse dog, a beast that he described as the black hound of destiny. He went on to describe it as a beast of fearsome visage and bloodshot eye. Jones was terrified and paralyzed with fear, expecting to be ripped to pieces by the huge beast at any moment. It was only with considerable courage that he eventually turned around to find that the beast had vanished. Rebecca Adams lived near Lagorne Castle, and one evening when she was going to town on some business, her mother tried to dissuade her, telling her she might be terrified by some apparition at the Haunted Lane side pit. But the bold Rebecca was not to be frightened by such nonsense and went on her way. It was rather dark when she was returning. She had passed by the haunted pit and was congratulating herself at having seen no ghost. Suddenly she saw a great dog coming towards her. When within about 4 or 5 yards of her, it stopped, squatted on its haunches, and set up such a scream, so loud, so horrible and so strong, that she thought the earth moved under her. Then she fell down in a faint. When she revived, it was gone, and it was well past midnight when she got home, weak and exhausted. Old Anthony said that he had met the Gwyllgi as he was coming home from courting a young woman of his acquaintance. Her name he delicately withheld as he did not marry her. Late one Sunday night, or it may have been Monday morning, he encountered in the haunted lane 2 large shining eyes which drew nearer and nearer to him. He was dimly able to discern, in connection with the gleaming eyes, what seemed a form of human shape above, but with the body and limbs of a large dog. He threw his hat at the terrible eyes, and the hat went whisking right through them, falling in the road beyond. Then the spectre disappeared, and Anthony hurried home just as fast as his shaking legs would carry him. The lane leading from Lisworney Crossways is reported to have been haunted by a Gwyllgi of the most terrible aspect. Mr. Jenkin, a worthy farmer living near here, was one night returning home from market on a young mare, when suddenly the animal shied, reared, tumbled the farmer off, and bolted for home. John, the farm servant, found her standing and trembling by the barn door, and well knowing the lane she had come through, suspected that she had seen the Gwyllgi. He and the other servants of the farm all went down the road, and there in the haunted lane they found the farmer on his back in the mud. Being questioned, the farmer protested it was the Gwyllgi and nothing less that had made all this trouble, and his nerves were so shaken by the shock that he had to be supported on either side to get him home, slipping and staggering in the mud in truly dreadful fashion all the way. There's one thing that I find particularly fascinating about the Gwyllgi, the corpse dog of Wales, and that is its interaction with our own pet dogs. Take a look at this story. It's about an exceptional pet dog named Brins. Of corpse dogs' existence, nobody has a doubt. Dogs are reliable witnesses of their presence in any place where they come, and no small anxiety is felt until the foul creatures leave the neighbourhood and the house dogs cease to howl. Such a one, well remembered, was the old dog Brins. Shaggy and red-eyed, he was not a particularly good sheepdog, but he was very faithful to his owners and full of doggish common sense. But the voice of Brins always struck terror into the community, for well was it known that someone was sure to die if Brins opened his mouth to howl at night. People would go out and look to see in what direction his head was pointed, so as to know the whereabouts of where the death would be. There was an old butcher, John Hughes, who had exceeded the allotted span of human days by 10 years, but at last his time came. He was taken ill, and from the hour when he began to keep to his bed, the old dog Brins began to howl. As night after night went by, Hughes growing weaker and weaker, so did the dog continue his howlings. As the old man's end drew near, Brins went over to his house, the two places not being far apart. At last, such was his boldness that he crept right under the window of the room where the dying man lay, and howled steadily until the end came. After this, his voice was not heard again at night until just before another death occurred. It was indeed bold of the old dog to go and howl beneath the sick man's window, because the wise who know say that as death approaches, the corpse dogs draw round the house, and on the last night they enter the room and stay by the bedside so as to be near when the breath leaves the body. Is it any surprise then that Brins was held in such high esteem in his community? Many credited Brins with being exceptionally brave and bold to go and howl beneath the sick man's window, because it was so believed that as death approached closer, so too the corpse dog would draw closer around the house. And yet, as it went about its business, the corpse dog brought no trouble at all to Brins. They were clearly aware of each other's presence, but there was no physical interaction between them, and certainly no confrontation. If this is so, it suggests that the corpse dog has no beef with a pet dog like Brins. It was there to do its job, just as the dog was. So, what do you think? What is the corpse dog? Is it a ghost or a spirit sent to collect the soul of the dying? Or, like Banshee, is it one of the fairy folk? I hope you enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed putting it together and getting to know the corpse dog of Wales. I'd like to send out my warmest thanks today to my patrons and YouTube channel members for their ongoing support. Friends, your support means so much to me. Thank you. Until next time, stay curious. Cheerio.